What else is happening in music or around
Don't
music?
ask me.
No. Well, just that you feel that gets you off, or that you feel is
That whatever
real.
would get me off is definitely irrelevant to 99% of your audience. So I'd say.
Well, that's that's not a fact.
Let me ask you a really frank question. What is your feeling about the average audience? Your average audience.
Any audience has a right to be entertained. And all musics exist solely for the entertainment of the people who like to hear those various musics. People who like to hear Grand Funk Railroad are not only entitled to hear Grand Funk Railroad, but it's a good thing that they exist in order to entertain the people who get off on that sort of thing.
I'd still like to find out what else turns you on, is it musically or outside music?
Usually
Because
orchestra music I like.
orchestra music.
Yeah.
What particular period, kind, composer?
Mostly contemporary orchestra music, because there's much more interesting orchestration in it. There's more, like from the late Romantic period up till now, there's more orchestrational interest in that kind of writing. I'm not too fond of Baroque or classical periods, because it's pretty cut and dried.
You like jazz?
Sometimes. Some of it's okay. I'm not a jazz fanatic by any stretch of the imagination.
Had people ever termed, like a portion of your music, though, jazz-oriented?
Yeah, they've done that.
You don't feel that's where it comes from?
Well, there are jazz elements in there. There's all kinds of other elements, too. The problem is that most of the people who either write about it or talk about it don't have a sufficiently wide musical background to appreciate the other elements that are in there. There are elements of Tibetan music. There are elements of all kinds of Asiatic cultures in there. There's elements of various non-musical things that have been applied to a musical function that are all used in those compositions. But unfortunately, the people that wind up discussing what we do have to stick it into a category that's easily understood by the people that they're either writing for or broadcasting to. So they say it's jazz influenced, or it's rock this, or it's rock that, or it's, they stick some simplistic label on it, which isn't fair to what the overall thing is, because it contains more elements than that.
What's your candid opinion of the average critic?
I would say that it's a good thing that they don't repair televisions, because nobody would get a good deal.
And yet, people are really oriented by critics. People go to movies because the critic says something is good, and if he doesn't say it's good, he can destroy an entire concept.
A critic is the logical extension of the American educational system, and the American educational system exists only to train consumers, and the critic is an aid in the training of consumers. And the critic's life is devoted to the training of consumers.
You think the average critic is on a permanent bummer?
No.
You think he really believes in what he's saying?
I think that many of them feel that they are contributing great art.
They have good jobs. They pay well.
Yeah. Right. Well, like when you think about how a critic has progressed, like in some cases.
Let me say one thing. I'm talking about critics in the rock and roll sense.
Right.
People who write for your usual rock and roll newspaper. I
Rolling
have no understanding or contact with any other real official critics who actually know music, and get in there and let, orchestra critics who might even study a score to make some statement about what they've seen or heard. But your usual rock and roll critic is a guy who probably could not join a group because he doesn't play anything, and seeks the status of some association with the rock and roll industry which will help to get him laid. So he chooses the typewriter, and he goes home to the typewriter, and he gets out some record, and he writes up his first review, and then hopefully sends it to Publication X and says, I'll send this away, and if they know what's good for them, they'll sign me up because I really know what's happening, as evidenced by this review I just wrote. And so that's the way they get work.
Let me kind of change the subject to get away from this conversation. A little about Mother's history. Recently we've been getting a lot of albums and things and rock into the radio station. We got this very interesting package about Jimmy Carl Black's album, Geronimo Black.
Yeah.
And in this package was this long kind of historical essay on how the Mothers were formed.
Well,
And he claims that he formed the Mothers. First of all, is that true?
no, that's not true. Second
And
of
he
all,
got you out of jail to fill in for someone else that had left.
No, that's not true.
That's not true.
First, let me say this about Jimmy Carl Black and the process by which his record company is attempting to merchandise what they do. I have no critical remarks to make about the quality of their music. However, he has no right to apply his somewhat inaccurate imagination to the history and development of the Mothers of Invention.
It was really interesting the way he said he got out of jail just to fill the place of this person, and then he went on 6 years of Frank Zappa's ego trip.
They came with an album at the stage?
No, there was a disc. I've heard the disc that
it's
comes
a little,
with that. Yeah.
Right, promo.
Okay,
disc.
well,
Yeah, I've got that.
I remember Jimmy Carl Black coming to the rehearsals, spending 2 weeks trying to learn how to play a drum fill in a song called Any Way the Wind Blows. And all he had to do was go dun da 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 dun da da dun da 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 dun. Took him 2 weeks to learn how to do that. That's what Jimmy Carl Black could play like when he joined the band. After he had been studying for a while and going out and trying to play something other than the Louie Louie that he'd been doing in Kansas, he could function adequately in 5/8 and 7/8 and play a bunch of things that were far more complicated than the drum fill at the end of the cadence and Any Way the Wind Blows. And it's just, it makes me a little bit angry that he represents me as somebody who has sort of tried to keep him obscure for whatever number of years he specifies on the disc and so on and so forth, because I've contributed to the support of his family at a time when Jim Black was spending more money on drugs and beer while his 5 kids and his wife were off someplace with the crabs in a hotel in New York,
And I'll get the crabs right here.
Yeah, direct from the Albert Hotel, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, yeah.
I just, I've lost all respect for Jimmy Carl Black. It's unfortunate, but I just think that he's...
Have you heard that album? Have you really listened to
Yeah.
it?
As a matter of fact, he brought it over to the house the night they finished mixing it, wanted to come over and play it on my system. And then went out and made that little disc that advertises the thing.
Yeah. The one song in that whole album that has any value whatsoever is Siesta, as far as I'm concerned. It's a really nice, mellow flute thing. I couldn't figure out who was playing that flute.
I think it's Bunk.
Bunk?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that he wrote it too.